I'm Julie Willard, and I am a member of the Crestwood Civic Club. I've been a member since 1985 and took a few years off to raise my kids, and I'm back now again, and I'm the chairman of our 100th anniversary event. The Crestwood Civic Club is founded in 1914, November 20th of 1914. We're an organization that does a lot of work with our educational aspect of our community. We have planted trees, we feed the firemen, we work with the Red Cross, we work with Apple Patch. We also do Christmas baskets at Christmas time for people that have needs. We help with school supplies for the children. We also have a scholarship fund that we have several recipients. We do $1,000 a year, per year, all 4 years for the scholarship fund. Tonight's event is a lot of different things. We have an Eagle Scout that has taken on the project of erecting a flagpole, and we'll now have a flag that is lighted. They've also done a lot of renovation type things, painting for us, cleaned up our yard. They've been a huge asset to us for this event. We also have the a cappella fellows here tonight. They'll be singing not only for the flag raising, but we also will have them singing as an entertainment.
The old songs, the good old songs for me. I love to hear those minor chords and good close harmony. My wild Irish rose, the sweetest flower that grows. You may search everywhere, but none can compare with my wild Irish rose, Irish rose. My wild Irish rose, my rose, the dearest flower that grows. And someday for my sake she may let me take the bloom from my wild Irish rose, my rose. The bloom from my wild Irish rose, wild Irish rose. Let's sing a song, let's ring a song, let harmony be true. Come join the crowd, sing long and loud like the chord busters do. Let's bust a chord, let's bust a chord, a good old major chord with some good close harmony. Enjoying the fun, we'll bust a minor one as we warble merrily. Up, 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 sing it through again, and then we'll all chime in. It will make your heart feel light. You'll be hoarse tomorrow, but forget your sorrow while we bust the chord tonight. If you're a loomba, stop on find your place, and the chord will be welcome, never fear. If you're a baritone, don't sleep around alone, and the leaves will be right over you. Just a chord or two, and then you'll know it's true, that a song makes things go everything right. Put away your trouble, let your joy be double while we bust a chord tonight. While we bust a chord tonight. Our song was a song of tomorrow. Our hearts were as high as the sky. But songs are forgotten and skies often gray. Nevertheless, there is this I can say. From the first
we have a woman named Mary Jo Morrow here from Stamford, Kentucky. She'll be doing a monologue from 1921 of the Sealback Hotel. And this is something reminiscent of what the ladies in the early 1900s would have done. Since there was no radio or TV, monologues were the form of entertainment. She'll be doing that for us.
This, as she said, was written in 1921 by Cordelia Greer Petrie. Angeline entered without the formality of knocking, confiscated the most comfortable seat in the house, and from some hidden source produced her box of snuff. Now, my brief acquaintance with her had taught me she scorned feudal amenities. So after speaking, I sat still and waited for Angeline to begin. Monologue is Angeline's long suit. I want to tell you about that there trip Lum and me took to Louisville with Judge Bowes to testify in that lawsuit of his. Now, he said it was all on him and took us around to the Sealback Hotel. Now, I didn't much want to go to the Sealback because I didn't know any of them Sealbacks. But rather than oppose the judge, I give in. When we got there, Miss Sealback's little boy gave that door a shove, and that door spun around like a merry-go-round. Fella had to step lively to keep from getting hit on the heels. Lum stopped right in the middle of the door to ask Miss Sealback, holler in there, and ask her if she had any biting dogs, and that door knocked him into the building. The minute we got in there, one of Miss Sealback's little boys grabbed the judge's valise, and he was reaching for my carpet bag when I let him know I took that bag myself. It had Lum's other shirt, my new shimmy nightgown, my drawers of unbleached muslin. I had some victuals and some fixings. I wasn't gonna nigh risk losing them valuables. Now, that room was big as a meeting house, and it had big columns. They didn't have no writing on them like they do at the county seat in the cemetery. And if I had been Miss Sealback, I would have been ashamed to have had those pictures on the wall, much less those brazen hussies that sat for them. And through a passel of palm trees, I heard a band playing, and I looked over there, and it was the biggest old man you've ever set your two eyes on. I took that to be old Mr. Sealback himself. And he was playing on a fiddle that was so big, he couldn't even set it under his chin. He had to rest it on the floor. And about that time, Lum was off looking at them pictures, and the judge came over with a man named Porter, and he said, now, Lum and I have some business to do at the Rathskeller, and Porter will take you to your room, 946. I said, see here, Judge, I ain't going nowhere without Lum. So he said, all right, he'd see us later. Well, we finally got Lum away from the pictures, and we went into a queer-looking little room. It was about 6 feet long, 6 feet square, and it didn't have no furniture or anything in there. And I heard somebody snap their fingers outside, so I got ready to get out and look for the judge, and my heart riz in my throat, and if you can believe me, that little room riz too. And there was a man over there. I didn't know what he was doing first, and then I saw that he was pulling us up by a rope, and he was pure puny looking too. Said I to myself, I would have catch hold of him and overpower him, but where would we drap to? Well, about the time I give up, the room came to a stop, the door flew open, and I flew out. But as fast as I wasn't as fast as Lum. He was 2 feet ahead of me, dropping the umbrella and the carpet bag, and saying he'd be dead burned if he ever got caught in something like that again. Well, we got to our room. Porter showed us where our room was, and we went in and dropped down on a chair. And the first thing I noticed was these little lamps. They was real tiny, and they gave out the best light. We don't have no coal oil like that in Mary Oaks. And they was set bottom upwards. I would think that'd be dangerous, especially with no insurance on the house. And the rug was really nice. What there was of it, it didn't cover the whole floor, but what there was of it was nice. And they had a bureau that had 3 mirrors. We're lucky at Mary Oaks if we have one that's not busted. Well, I could even see myself in the back. And I said, Lum, when we came in here, it was cold out, but it's warm here. And we looked around for the fireplace. There wasn't any fireplace, but there was a little stove all quilled up in the wall, and it gave out good heat. And there was a big room adjoining ours that was all white and illuminated. It looked like there was a tomb with the lid off. I cut a hold of Lum and prevent him from entering, because I knew as sure as he went in there, the bottom would drop clear out. And I said, Lum, before we go downstairs, we've got to blow them little lights out, because the coal oil will be gone. Well, I blowed and Lum blowed. He fanned them with his hat, and we couldn't get them out. But sure enough, Lum was projecting with a little button on the wall, and they went out and left us in darkness. Well, Lum had brought along his lantern to kind of see if we wanted to knock around after dark. And we had the worst time finding those steps. We had to crawl through a window. They were on the outside, and we never gotten down. And when we got down, there was Judge Bowes waiting for us, saying he was hungry as a bar, and he wanted to go in and eat right then. Well, when we got in there, I was ashamed of myself that I hadn't hunted Miss Seal back up and helped her. Now, I couldn't have took hold like I do in my own kitchen, but I could have peeled the taters, I could have ground the coffee, and I could have choked out the biscuits. And it's just awful the way these people impose on her and come in at mealtime. And if Mr. Sealback would get out and help his wife, she would get dinner on the table before sundown, and she'd bring it in all at once instead of piecemeal. First thing they brought in was some soup and crackers. Then they brought in a little Momox in a shell, and it had ice on it, and I know those shells would give me heartburn for a week, so I wasn't gonna try them. But Lum is a great one for trying something. So seeing the judge put a little red stuff from a bottle on his, Lum poured a lot on his, and he took a bite. And to my dying days, I'll never forget Lum. He groaned and he moaned. Tears ran down his face. He grabbed for the ice and filled his mouth chock full. And he told me afterwards, if hell were stewed down to a pint, it couldn't be as hot as that stuff in that pot. And then they brought in some beef with a little parsley somebody had carelessly spilled on it. And then they brought in lettuce and new tomatoes, and it's December. I had no idea the gardens were so forward in Louisville. But I heard later that Miss Sealback raises hers up on the roof. And it does stand to reason that the livestock can't get to it. It's closer to the sun. But I don't see how she gets her old mule up there to break the ground. And then, I don't want to talk ugly about Miss Sealback, but she didn't come by and speak to us or anything. And if she had any kind of sweetening, she left it in the cupboard. She didn't bring that to us. And about that time when we'd all ate everything, she finally brought in the coffee. And she'd run out of knives for the pie. She had to bring in forks. And about that time, they must have run out of goblets because they brought in some water in a little bowl. I was so famished, I drank mine with one gulp. But I never would have believed the judge was so rude. He washed his hands in his. Now Lum was getting ready to take his when he seen the waiter bringing in something that was all aflame. And Lum was quick to action. He jumped up, throwed the water on there and knocked it out, throwed it all over the floor. Now, there was a lot of victuals on the floor, and I would have helped cleaned it up, but that's when the trouble started. The little brass bowl had landed on this bald man's head, and everybody was laughing. And so he rushed over, and he started talking to Lum in some kind of foreign language, and Lum thought he was complimenting him for keeping the house from burning down. But Lum soon found out that what he was saying was not a compliment. So Lum got ready to get up, and about that time the judge calmed him down. And in all that ruckus, I see the judge take a big silver dollar and put it under his plate. And I see the waiter eyeing it. Well, I got it. I took it. And I was going to give it to the judge later and tell him how careless he was with his money. And then we went to get, some pretty little girl was keeping the judge's hat and Lum's hat. And so we went to get those, and the judge took a quarter out and gave to her. I hope Miss Bowles don't hear about that. If a nice Christian man like the judge can't behave, what chance does Lum have? Then about that time, we went in Miss Sealback's big sitting room, and the judge asked us to excuse him, said he was going to dictate a letter. Now, Lum said he'd heard of sending letters and getting them, but he'd never heard of dictating one, and if it was anybody but the judge, he'd think he was up to some devilment. Well, about that time, we took off our shoes so we could feel the nice floor covering, and Lum got out his pipe, and I got out my snuff box and got ready to take me a big dip. But I looked around, there was no fireplace, and the only door was that revolving one, and the keenest spitter that ever spit can't spit through 4 doors and them going at once. So I was just getting ready to put my snuff box back when I saw this little brass contraption near a door, and some man was spitting in that, so I decided I'd use it too. It was already gormed up, I decided, and I would be glad to take it to the branch and scour it good, because I didn't want to put any work on Miss Sealback. Well, about that time, Lum says he thinks that he's going to go out and cut some wood, because the way his rheumatism was bothering him, he knowed it was going to rain the next day. And Lum so seldom names working that I didn't like to disencourage him. I told him to go on and go, but to keep his good breeches, not to get them dirty. So I was sitting there, and I almost lulled myself off to sleep when here comes one of Miss Sealback's little boys hollering, "Mr. Allerton, Mr. Allerton," and he would run from place to place. So I knowed it was something important, so I got up to follow him to ask him what was wrong. And he went down some steps, and he went in a big room, and a lot of people were being shaved. And I looked over there, and lo and behold, I saw Lum, and he was sitting there across from this little girl, looking like butter wouldn't melt in his mouth, and if you can believe me, she was whittling on his fingernails. Well, I brought him out of there in a hurry. And the only thing that saved that little girl, she was young, because otherwise she'd have had a tongue lashing from me. So we went back upstairs, and Lum was really nice to me, and he said he was going to give me some of his gum wax. And he asked me if I couldn't get out my red comb and get my hair done like those city women where they have these big curly cues on the sides. I told Lum that was all right for a young girl, but us married women had better keep our ears uncovered, because we need to hear what's going on. About that time, here comes a woman with 2 little dogs. They were so little, they must have been little puppies. And Lum said if he'd known that was the style, he would have brought our old hound dog, tied a stout rope to him, because he didn't want anybody to think that Mary Oaks was behind the style. And he said that if he'd brought the dog, he and Mr. Sealback could have gotten out and treated him some possums. And about that, and he decided that he was not going back up the stairs, because he didn't want to be drawn back up in that little thing or come back out with those iron steps. So he said it'd be nice if Mr. Sealback could put us a pallet on the floor. And if not, he was going to sit up all night, and he wouldn't mind having a square dance. And Lum is really good at calling figures. I can hear Lum now. He said Mr. Sealback could play the fiddle, and he could call the figures. First thing he would say was, salute your partner, balance all. Ladies to the right, gents don't go. Ladies to the right, gents also. Chase the goose and chase the squirrel. Chase the pretty girl around the world. Dance, dance, it ain't no sin. The church will turn you out, but they'll take you back in. And about that time, here comes a man that was dressed the curiousest we'd ever seen. He had on knee-length pants and women's stockings, and he had a canvas bag flung over his shoulders, and he had the funniest little walking sticks we'd ever seen. Now, if it's anything Lum loves, it's a walking stick. He's always figuring and making some for his neighbors. It's really the only thing he works at steady. So he rushed over to the man and he said, "My name's Lum Keaton. I reckon you know what yours is." And he bartered him and tried to get him to give him a walking stick. And he said, well, the man looked at him and he finally laughed and he said, "Well, these things were a Jonah for me at the club today. I'll be glad to give you one." And we were a little pestered about that because we weren't sure whether the man had come by him honestly. And really, you could tell he was a little green foolish because nobody in the right mind would be dressed like that. Well, about that time, here comes the judge apologizing for being gone so long, and he said he was going to carry us to the theater to see Othello. Well, Lum had his mouth open to ask who Othello was when I nudged him. I have told Lum and told him that it's a silent hog that gets the slop, and that he's always opening his mouth and showing his ignorance. So we went to the theater, and the nicest little boy carried us down front and got us all seated and gave us a bill. Well, Lum nor I, neither one can read or write, but we didn't let on. We just held the bill and looked at it, and we had a good chance to look at the people that were coming in. And I didn't think much of those dressmakers in Louisville. Why, those people were coming in with long skirts in the front and they short in the back, and those women, whatever they had for the waist, they didn't have enough on their back. One woman didn't have enough on her back to cover the palm of my hand. Lum said it would made him goose chills bump out on him, and he had his red flannels on. Well, about that time, we noticed that people were looking at us and even pointing us out to their friends. And I think the main thing they were looking at was my Meriwether hat, and with those plumes that I'd gotten off Sears Roebuck for $1.85. And as nice as that hat was, don't you know, one man in the back had the nerve to ask me to take it off. I told him I certainly would not. About that time, the lights dimmed and the band started playing the mournful tune and the curtain raised. Now, I want to tell you something. I didn't care much for that play. Bluebeard that we gave down at the Gillard Theater was much better. And those people were dressed the queerest. There was a man named Iago. He had on a little short breeches and his wife's hat with a big plume on it, and he had a lot of velvet thrown over his shoulder. But you could tell he thought he looked good. And there was a man named Othello, and he'd married a girl named Desdemona, and her father was plumb ashy about it. He was so upset about it. And I don't know that Shakespeare fella, but I really could have helped him with that play. In the first place, what he should have done was had Desdemona come out and sing 2 ballads. She could have sung Goodbye Ma, Goodbye Paul, and then she could have sung The Maiden Waited at the Garden Gate for the Engineer. And then if Iago and those other foreigners could come out there and turn somersaults. And then if they wanted to have Othello in it, he could have played the guitar. Well, about that time, Othello was nice at first, but then he got plumb fracas, and he and Desdemona started fussing about a handkerchief. Now, you'd think a married couple would have more to fuss about than a handkerchief, but he got very fracas about it, and Desdemona, for a married woman, didn't start out right. She should have jawed him back, and if that didn't work, she should have hit him over the head with a tire iron and then gotten in her, but she didn't do that. And so Othello started choking. He got a pillow and started choking Desdemona, and Desdemona was panting for breath. Well, Lum stood it as long as he could. He jumped up, throwed off his coat, and said as long as he was here, no man was going to do that to a woman. And before the judge could stop him, he rushed down and grabbed Othello by the scruff of the neck and told Desdemona to beat it because he didn't know how long his strength would hold out. And I was sure proud of Lum. He was the only man in that theater that had the nerve to do that. And about that time, Desdemona, instead of thanking him, she turned on him like a wildcat. And all those people in the theater were hollering at Lum and threatened to have him indicted. And we saw a little place that we could get out, and we slipped in the back in a little narrow alley, and about that time, here comes some men in blue shirts and brass buttons in a big bus, and it had bells on it, the inn.
We have quite a few dignitaries here who will be doing proclamations for us for the 100th anniversary.
But know ye that the esteemed members of the Crestwood Civic Club are recognized and honored upon this auspicious occasion of the 100th anniversary celebration of this vital organization, an outstanding event marking 100 years of invaluable service to its members and to the community of Crestwood, Kentucky and the surrounding area. Whereas the strength of our communities depend in great measure on citizens who are willing to give those personal offerings that will make a positive difference in the lives of others, the members of the Crestwood Civic Club are offered sincere gratitude and highest commendation for their laudable contributions of fellowship, goodwill, and community spirit, and are extending the best wishes and for success and good fortune as they continue the work of the common good, and on the motion of Senator Ernie Harris is deemed by this honorable body worthy of its recognition. This is citation number 1. Citation number 2 starts off in the same way, but I will skip the first sentence. Well, I'll do this. Recognized by the auspicious occasion of the 100th anniversary of the Crestwood Civic Club. Whereas, where's Betty? Betty, you'll remember this. Whereas in the early 60s, this senator had the privilege of learning ballroom dancing at this club and had the opportunity to vie with the likes of Jerry McMahon, Sammy Severance, Mike Cantrell, Jack Swan, and others for the attention of several young ladies, to include Carol Shadoan, Jenny Marker, Ann Sims, Becky Shown, and Becky Whitfield. And whereas the dancing lessons help provide a certain amount of polish to this farm boy from Brownsboro, and whereas the senator takes and whereas the senator takes absolutely no credit for any fireworks that might have gone off in that fireplace over there, this senator has only fond memories of great appreciation for the captivating cuties of the Crestwood Civic Club, and on this laudable contribution to the community, la-di-da-di-da. So in honor of the Crestwood Civic Club, it's a privilege to be here tonight, and let's look forward to the next 100 years.
Certainly a pleasure to be here tonight with all of you, and as we listened to the stories from the earlier part of the last century. It brought back a lot of memories. Couldn't help but think of my grandmother, who, when you were talking about that, she told me she lived to be 100. She died in the late 90s. Told me about the first time she ever saw a car, and her and her father were riding in a wagon, and he stopped and got out of the wagon and held the horses while that car chugged on by. And, how much, things have changed, obviously, tremendously in 100 years, but looking at this group here, I think our average age is over 50, probably. So probably most of us don't think 100 is that many years ago. But how marvelous it is if the ladies that founded this club could be here. I'm sure they're here with us in spirit tonight. To think that someone began, an idea, and nothing begins until someone has an idea. An idea has survived 100 years, and it was taken by a group that began, and of course some people have carried it for a long, long way. This lady here, so nice of you to be along for all these years, and others. So I think Dennis, who's coming up next, you've been here half the time the club has been in existence. So how wonderful that is. So Ernie mentioned that the legislature is too cheap to provide a frame. Fiscal court is not. And so I thank you for your contribution. One reason I like to bring a frame is I know it won't go in the file cabinet very easily. You can hang right on the wall. I'll give you a head start here. So I'd like to read this proclamation on behalf of the Fiscal Court. Whereas the Crestwood Civic Club began in 1914 as a means for friends to join together to benefit the community, and whereas hundreds of Crestwood area ladies, their daughters and granddaughters, have spent innumerable hours over the past 100 years raising funds to help meet the needs of the community, including providing brick for sidewalks, funds for installing streetlights and fire alarms, raising money for schools, clothing children, providing toys and food for families. And whereas the outstanding example of leadership and community spirit displayed by the Crestwood Civic Club has inspired many Oldham County residents, and whereas Oldham County Fiscal Court and the City of Crestwood in particular is extremely proud of the accomplishments of the members of the Crestwood Civic Club on this, the 100th anniversary of the club. Now, therefore, I, David Vogel, Oldham County Judge Executive, hereby do declare September 20th, 2014 as Crestwood Civic Club Day in Oldham County, and urge everyone in Oldham County to congratulate and honor the members of the Crestwood Civic Club. Witness my hand on the 20th day of September, the year of our Lord, 2014. So, congratulations.
It's certainly a pleasure to be here tonight, and the first thing I want to do is, besides myself representing the city of Crestwood, we have two city commissioners here, Clayton Stess Sr. and his wife Betty, and David Bryant and his wife Joan. So the second thing that I want to mention, and I had really forgotten about it until I heard Senator Harris mention about the dancing class or dancing school. My wife and I both were at that same thing, maybe different ones, but that's one thing I think I failed at. But Ernie went on and he's gone to Dancing with the Stars. But the ladies of the Crestwood Civic Club, and I was honored to have been bestowed the honor of being the only male honorary member of the Crestwood Civic Club. These ladies have done a tremendous job for the community over 100 years, and you all should be proud of yourselves for achieving that goal. And the community, I can assure you, is proud of you, because I can't think of another organization in the county that's hit the 100-year mark, and they come far and few between, I can assure you. So tonight, we prepared from the city of Crestwood a proclamation, and this says, City of Crestwood Proclamation, to all whom these presents shall come, a proclamation of the City of Crestwood concerning the 100th anniversary of the Crestwood Civic Club. Whereas the Crestwood Civic Club has served the City of Crestwood and South Oldham community since it was founded on November 20th, 1914, and whereas their 100 years of faithful service has been beneficial to Crestwood and the South Oldham community through leadership, charitable, educational, and religious endeavors, as well as improvement of the community. And whereas the City of Crestwood and South Oldham community greatly appreciates the benefit of their many years of service, and whereas the Civic Club's many years of dedication and service have made Crestwood and the South Oldham community a better place in which to live, and whereas the City of Crestwood now desires to show their appreciation of the Crestwood Civic Club, now therefore be it proclaimed by the City of Crestwood that the city wishes to express profound and sincere gratitude and appreciation to the ladies of the Civic Club for their 100 years of service to the Crestwood community. Presented this 20th day of September 2014. Mr. Mayor.